Welcome, I'm Nina Griffin and this is the Astrology and Magic channel. Today we'll talk about the eclipse of April 30th, 2022. First off, I wanted to say thank you to all of my patrons. I appreciate all of your support. If you would like to get access to my astrology and magic videos early, you can go to patreon.com/NinaGriffin and become a patron. At the highest tier, you also get access to my monthly ebook, Magical Elections, which teaches you how and when to make planetary talismans to make important life changes. We have a total solar eclipse coming up on April 30th. It's at 10 degrees Taurus. Because it's in Taurus, it is ruled by Venus, and in this particular case, Venus is very strong. Venus is exalted in Pisces, and on top of this, she also conjoins Jupiter in his domicile in Pisces. Now, it's rare enough to have an eclipse that's ruled by a benefic that is as strong as Venus is in this case, but it's even rarer to have Venus conjoining Jupiter, the other benefic. Taken together, this eclipse presents a rare opportunity for harmony and prosperity. Now, as with all eclipses, the door is open for only a short while, usually a few days before and then a few days after the exact eclipse. Sometimes we see effects as early as 1 or even 2 weeks prior to the eclipse, but those are rarer, and usually events start happening much more frequently and with greater intensity as we get closer to the date of the eclipse. Now, the eclipse degree itself, 10 degrees Taurus, is sextile to Mars in Pisces, which adds a little bit of energy, but because the sextile is generally a milder or weaker aspect, this is going to be a relatively weak influence that's going to be harder to discern in the events surrounding the eclipse. Now, the duration of the eclipse is just under 4 hours, so according to traditional rules, 1 hour equals 1 year. And this means that the overall effects of the eclipse are going to be felt for just under 4 years. So we could see the effects and their overall echoes happening until early 2026 or thereabouts. Now, the eclipse is visible in Antarctica, the tip of South America, and the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. This is important to note because the areas where the eclipse is visible will be the most strongly affected. Now, even though not many people live in these areas, the Earth itself may still be affected via events like earthquakes and tsunamis, which could potentially then impact areas that are more populous, even though they're farther away. I think the concept of earthquakes is one that's worth watching with this eclipse, since we have Venus, Jupiter, and Neptune all together in Pisces. Not to mention, of course, Mars is present there as well. So we get a combination of what I would say are seismic effects, especially ones that involve the ocean, because Pisces is particularly associated with the ocean. In the same vein, we may see storms in the oceans around this time that can disrupt shipping and other marine traffic. Now let's talk about a couple of possible specific effects. The 17th century English astrologer William Lilly wrote that eclipses in the second decan of Taurus portend the death of some queen. I did note that this particular eclipse is about 10 degrees away from the natal sun of Queen Elizabeth of England, and we do know that, unfortunately, she has been in declining health recently. So I do wonder if this eclipse could indeed bring her reign to an end. If we set the eclipse chart for London, we see that the eclipse is in the 6th house of illness. But I think it's even more important to note that the ruler of the 10th house in the chart set for London is Mercury. Because, of course, the 10th house rules the heads of state, it rules the monarch, the person in authority. And Mercury is squared by Mars here, who is positioned on the 4th house cusp of endings. We also note that Mercury rules the 8th house as well as the 10th, which underscores the serious placements of this eclipse that is set for London. The other interesting element is that the following eclipse on May 15th will be in Scorpio, which is the sun sign of Prince Charles, who would be, of course, king after Elizabeth II, unless he chooses to abdicate in favor of his eldest son, William, which is interesting because William has Scorpio on his midheaven, his house of career and social standing. So to me, the identity of the successor is less clear. It's important to note that Pisces also traditionally rules several countries and regions that could be impacted by this eclipse, despite it not being visible there. These are Portugal, the region of Normandy in France, northern Egypt, Alexandria, Rem in France, Calabria in Sicily, Worm and Regensburg in Germany, and Compostela in Spain. Interestingly, the Rem Cathedral in France is where French kings were crowned for 1,000 years. So I do wonder if this eclipse could have a bearing on the French presidential election, April 24th. The eclipse conjoins the natal moon of President of France, Emmanuel Macron. He has a moon in Taurus in his natal chart. And because this eclipse is so potent and so beneficial, and because it impacts a favorable and strong planet in Macron's chart, it could be surprisingly beneficial for him. I also wonder if this eclipse is going to start having some impact on Facebook. You may know that Mark Zuckerberg is a sun sign Taurus, and that Facebook went public also on an eclipse in the Taurus-Scorpio polarity many years ago now. I wouldn't be surprised if the coming weeks and months also portended some major changes for Facebook. Alright, thanks for watching. I'm Nina Griffin, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel.